So today on Greater Podcast, we're talking to Alan Sinclair, who is a wildfire fighter, part of the Marsh Foundation that dealt with natural disasters. How are you, Alan?
I'm good. Good to see you today, Ben.
Thank you so much for joining us. And just to start us off, how would you describe your journey from when you were 16 years old to where you are now today, and how did your life influence the professions you've gone into?
Well, boy, when I was 16 years old, I really had no idea what I was going to do with myself. When I graduated high school at 18 and found my career at 19, and it wasn't a career that I had sought. I had no idea that there was a difference between structure firefighters and wildland firefighters, and I became a wildland firefighter, and that became my career.
You mentioned that you didn't know the difference between structured firefighters. What is the actual difference?
So here in the United States, it's a different career path. We've got municipal firefighters, structure firefighters that are, working in communities and in cities. And then we've got land management agencies. There's 5 land management agencies that employ a wildfire workforce. I worked for 2 of those in my career, the United States Forest Service, and then at the end of my career, the Bureau of Indian Affairs. But there's also the United States Park Service, the Fish and Wildlife Service, the Bureau of Land Management. And all of those agencies have responsibility to protect, our wild areas, our community lands. And part of that is responding to wildfires. And so it's a completely different track than doing structure fire and staying within municipalities and cities and responding to structure fires and all the things that the professional firefighters do. On the wildland side, we're professional firefighters that spend a lot of times out in the woods, and we are trained specifically to respond to our wildfires.
So you worked as a national Type 1 incident commander. Can you elaborate on what that actually means?
Yeah, so in the United States, we've got 16, 17 Type 1 teams. There are national incident management teams. To become qualified, it takes a long time. It took me probably 25 years. There's a progression that we do when you start fighting wildland fires. And you move up and you get a little bit more responsibility as you move up, from leading a squad on a crew to leading a crew, maybe leading an engine, maybe leading a group of engines to an assignment, being responsible for an area of a fire, a geographical area on a fire and all the people there, to being operationally responsible for the fire, to being the incident commander where you're working with a team to manage large incidents and all the complexities involved with that. So I had the honor of serving as a Type 1 incident commander for the last 3 years of my career. Prior to that, I was a Type 2, which is more of a regional team. So it's for me, it was a huge honor to be able to serve in that capacity.
So they obviously been through a lot of fires and incidents. There's one particular incident I'm interested in, which is the Yarnell Hill fire. And tomorrow is obviously its 10th anniversary. One of the deadliest firefighting disasters ever in the US, if I'm not mistaken. Can you tell us a bit about your experience as a peer supporter and the effect it had on your mental health?
Yeah, sure. So, prior to Yarnell, I had been working within our region. I was part of a regional peer support team. We actually responded nationally. So when we had tragedy fires, we would send a group of people that would go and talk to people. We had some training, so we would go and visit with people that had experienced the tragedy, maybe witnessed something bad happening to people, and really try to support them, when they're struggling to make good decisions, link them with, therapists, professional people if they needed to. And by coming from the industry, by being a wildland firefighter, by understanding, what job they do and kind of what world they live in, A peer support team is a valuable tool to use to, start moving people in a positive direction of dealing with tragedy. When the Yarnell Hill fire, the June 30th, 10 years ago in 2013, that day, that morning, I was actually doing a peer support assignment. There was a national forest in northern Arizona that had a couple firefighters that were killed in an off-duty accident, and we were there with a small peer support team talking to them about their experience and trying to, again, move them forward in a positive direction. I was also going through my incident commander training at the time, and I had just been the trainee on the Dose fire. So if you've seen the movie Only the Brave, they saved the big juniper tree in that movie, and that happened. They actually saved that tree on the Dose fire, about the week before the Yarnell Hill fire. My initially, I was going to go to Yarnell and be the incident commander trainee. That changed when the complexity of that incident increased. But when they lost contact with the crew, I was asked to respond as a peer supporter. And that's how I ended up there.
I mean, I've done a lot of research on the Yarnell Hill fire, and it seems extremely hectic. How has it changed who you are today as a person?
Wow. So, my experience there, here I was living in this peer supporter world, also operationally responding to fires, also, training to become an incident commander. So I was very involved in wildland. I had training to help people deal with tragedy. And here I was now in the middle of this very big tragedy involving people that I know. And I wasn't prepared for that experience, even with the training that I had.
Yeah.
So for me, the experience there impacted me. I was diagnosed with PTSD after, and there was probably about a 9-month period from June 30th of 2013 until the middle of March in 2014, where the PTSD was real, and I was dealing with the impacts of that. And it's a journey that at the end of it you can go different directions. And I'm fortunate that I had support and was able to make good decisions and move on in my career and become a type 1 IC. I mean, so for me that was a big deal, because I had experienced this tragedy. It negatively impacted me, but I was able to course correct, take responsibility for my mental health, and move forward in a direction that allowed me to operate at the top of my industry as a type 1 IC.
You mentioned PTSD, and how are you able to overcome this PTSD or work through it? Because I can imagine that hopefully a lot of people with PTSD will watch this and get a vague idea of how you can actually overcome that. How did you do it?
Well, I had a lot of support, and I was open to things people offered. And if it was coming from a good place, I was going to try it. And, here I was a guy spending a lot of time in the woods, a lot of time away from home, just on these, big, exciting fires. I mean, it's, these big fires, there's a lot of adrenaline with that. And, that was my world. I was just doing that. And, somebody approached me and told me about yoga and how that might be beneficial. I tried it. It wasn't something that stuck with me, but I did try it at the time. People talked about meditating. I tried that. I tried the different things that people offered. And Amanda Marsh, so Eric Marsh's widow, has become just a part of my family now. She was the first person to offer me EMDR therapy. EMDR is eye movement disassociation and reattachment. So it's a specific therapy that people use for people like me, and it was beneficial. And Amanda started the Eric Marsh Foundation after this this fire to support wildland firefighters. I think I was the first person that she supported. That's why I'm on the board of directors now, because that support was very helpful to getting me back on track and helping me move past it. But it's a process. There's nothing fast about it. It's just each day making a decision to move forward. From June 30th to about March 15th of 14, I was struggling, and the fire season was right around the corner. We were moving towards fire season 2014, and I had to make a decision. Was I going to go and do the job that I'd been doing, since I was a teenager and excel at it, or was I going to give it up? Because there's really no room not to be at your the peak of your performance when you're engaged in these big fires. And so for me, it was it ended up in a good space. I'm proud of overcoming it and moving ahead in my career.
And today, are you still working through it, or are you past that stage now?
I think I'll always carry a piece of it with me. The sadness pops up at weird times. I've taught at a local college for over 20 years. I teach our basic wildland course, and the first courses after that, when students were asking questions about it, there was times where I had to walk out of the room, where the emotions would take over, and I'd just have to excuse myself for a minute and then go back and re-engage. And that lasted for a few years. It was just I knew it was going to happen. It was kind of expected, and I knew how I was going to deal with it when I was in a public setting. I'd just excuse myself, step away, compose myself, and get back to business. So I'm always going to carry pieces of it with me, but I believe what gets better over time is my ability to manage those feelings and really focus on the good things in life.
And what actually affected you in those fires? I mean, what caused that sadness from the incident?
Well, just my involvement in that incident. I was part of the recovery of the firefighters, and that was a tough day. And so from that experience, and then dealing with the impacts of having that experience, what I learned was that being a peer supporter and being involved in fires and tragedies for a long time, some of them that I felt kind of distance from, that weren't personal because I didn't know the people, they still impacted me. I worked on a ranger district for the Forest Service that had a high use recreation area. We got a river and lakes and a lot of people coming out, and there's a lot of car accidents and drownings and all these things that I had experienced in my career that I just kind of moved past without really considering it. And when I went through therapy, some of those things came up, and I didn't realize that they were still bothering me because I just kind of hid them away and never confronted them or never really thought much about them, but they were still there. So I think, I spent a lot of time kind of doing a personal inventory, what I was carrying around with me, how it was affecting me, how it was affecting my relationships, the way I behaved. I mean, that all of that, all your experiences really mold who you are and how you're moving through life. And when you really take a look at them and address them and figure out if you're reacting in a way that you're proud of, that's where you start doing that work to figure out how to take that baggage with you through life.
Absolutely. So we're obviously discussing PTSD. How has your experience on PTSD shaped your perspective on mental health and its importance within the firefighting and emergency response community?
Wow, it it made me realize that, the tragedy I was involved with that kind of daylighted all the issues I was having with all the other tragedies was, very public. I mean, you're halfway around the world and you know about this fire, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So, um, I had a lot of support because of how public it was. But what I recognized was that people are dealing with tragedies every day. That what my experience was no more significant than other people's experiences. Right. I was fortunate to have a bunch of support.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful that by speaking right now, it encourages people to seek support and be better if they're struggling. Right.
Which is our aim, of course, yeah.
Within the industry, I think it's important to have the conversation and to talk about it. So that's where I got with it, was that it shouldn't be something that we don't talk about. It should be something that we talk about. It shouldn't be seen as a sign of weakness. It should be seen as a sign of strength when somebody engages those issues and tries to figure out how to manage them.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go more back into when you were actually working in those fires. How were you able to handle the immense pressure and responsibility that comes with leading complex and high risk emergency operations? I can imagine that must be quite difficult.
It is, but we manage them using teams. And
Yeah.
so, it's not just one person. I had the title of incident commander, but really it's an incident management team. So everybody working together to, you know, to fix the problem, but, achieve the results that are requested. It's a group effort. So, I mean, that team environment's very important. It's you learn to count on each other, you lean on each other. Teams, those high functioning teams, work very well together, and they're picking each other up when people are struggling and moving forward together as a unit. So, the type 1 team, there's about 60 people on that team, and those are just the people managing the incident, and providing the oversight. That's not the firefighters and everybody else coming in. That's just the incident management team. So it's a big group of people that work very closely together and deal with some very complex things. And it's that team environment that makes it possible.
Yeah. And you're obviously constantly putting yourself at risk in these fires and almost trying to help people by being vulnerable and almost, I mean, how do you strike a balance between being a strong leader and acknowledging your own vulnerabilities or limitations? I mean, how do you go about doing that?
Um, wow, that's a good question. What I did in my personal experience was I did a lot of soul searching. I was um, trying to understand me a little bit better,
Yeah.
because I'm sitting here interacting with a bunch of people, and I had a desire to really understand what they were seeing when I was talking to them, and that's not that's not an easy thing to do, when you're taking a hard look at yourself all the time. But I think it's important to take a good look at yourself, do an inventory of your strengths and weaknesses, and then try to leverage the strengths and weaknesses of the people that you're working with, um, to blend it together real well, right? So that
Yeah.
the team's strong, and where I was not as strong as a leader, I was dependent on the team to kind of fill that. And where I was strong as a leader, I was trying to leverage that and use those strengths to make things easier for the team.
And you mentioned leadership. What kind of leadership styles actually worked in trying to make a job a success?
Well, there's a lot of different leadership styles out there. I mean, there's tons of different books that you can read, and try to figure out what's going to work for you. For me, it was working with other leaders and picking up things I liked, noting things that I didn't appreciate, that I would then try not to do those things with the folks I was working with on teams, and making it about the team, and not about me as the incident commander. I tried to always ensure that the team understood how significant the work that they were doing was, just showing that appreciation, and just
So
do
so
do
teamwork.
my best to work with them, and make it a team effort. You hear there's no I in team,
Yeah.
and that's very relevant in this business.
It's actually a very interesting comparison to have with the wildfires and how you dealt with it and personal issues in society, because everyone faces their certain problems and goes through this sort of process. Can you share any specific incident where you found unexpected obstacles or setbacks and how you actually dealt with this both professionally and personally?
Wow, each of the incidents, especially the big complex incidents, they've got their own unique challenges, and 2020 was a crazy year, with the pandemic, and the polarizing politics in the United States. That was a very interesting year to be engaged in wildland fires. We in the United States, we're moving firefighters around the country,
Yeah.
from state to state as our fire season kind of moves, and we had to figure out how to do that during a pandemic. And our team had the very first large incident in 2020, during that pandemic. So having to set standards for firefighters on an incident when we're learning a lot about the pandemic, and using those best practices that maybe not everybody had bought into, and having to make a stand and say, this is the way we're moving, forward on this incident, which then kind of led how, incidents followed throughout that season, what people were going to require, of firefighters in fire camps as they're operating on the line, trying to maintain some distance between crews, and wearing masks, and making sure they're washing their hands. All those little things, I think, were challenging to set into place. But the way we did it was by constantly keeping up on new information coming out,
Yep.
and making decisions as a team, and leading as a team, together, leading by example. So the team bought into what we were doing and what we were asking the firefighters to do. So having that team as a united front to influence the change needed to respond during a global pandemic,
Yeah.
that was a challenge.
And family and friends and significant others, I mean, surely they take a strain when it comes to fighting and doing all that sort of stuff. What kind of steps do you take to navigate those sort of challenges?
Wow, when I was fully engaged in my career before I retired, I did not do a good job of doing that, because I was gone, and it was always an emergency, and it was last minute. You got 2 hours, got to have wheels turning towards wherever that next fire was, and I go away for a couple weeks and come home. But while I was gone, life had gone on. The dogs still needed to be fed, the garbage needed to go out, the
Absolutely.
mail needed to, daily things still happen. And then coming back and trying to reintegrate into that. Didn't do a good job. So I think what I would, do over, with my family life, if I could, is being more engaged and understanding that, yeah, I had a big responsibility to go do what I was choosing to go do. But that responsibility shouldn't overshadow the responsibility of being a good family participant in my family,
Yep.
being a good husband, being a good father. Um, those things, I think I did a decent job, but definitely there were impacts to our family because I was gone so long. I'd be gone 4 to 6 months out of the year fighting fires. Here we leave for 2 weeks. These fires go on for a long time, and I'd leave Arizona, go to Idaho, go to Oregon, go to
Yep.
Washington, go to California, go somewhere and be gone for an extended period of time and then come back. So there's got to be a good life balance with accepting a responsibility like that, and I think people just need to figure out what that is. It's kind of
And
hard to do though when you're.
did you find that at the end, or was it still a struggling theme throughout your career?
It. I think towards the end, I did a better job. It just. I think during my career, we had a definitive fire season when I started, and then throughout my career that changed, where we started not calling them fire seasons, we were calling them fire years, and we were responding, and firefighters are still doing this. They're responding all the time, and so they're not really getting that break that we used to get, and people are going to have to figure that out. I don't know what that means. When you're constantly responding, firefighters got to figure out, and managers, people managing firefighters, got to figure out, when to slow it down and make sure people are getting quality home time. There's got to be a balance there.
So we've obviously been discussing your life story, not your life story, but how you've gone through these fires and how you've dealt with all your situations. I'm going to switch the topic more towards the Eric Marsh Foundation itself. Can you tell us a bit more about what the Eric Marsh Foundation is and what it actually tries to achieve?
Yeah, so the Eric Marsh Foundation, Amanda Marsh started the foundation after the Yarnell Hill fire to honor her late husband, Eric, who was the superintendent of the Granite Mountain Hot Shots. Initially she was providing support, and they still do. They provide support to families of firefighters who lose a wildland firefighter or have wildland firefighter experience a significant injury, tragedy. But they're now more focused on the mental health support to wildland firefighters, which was a huge piece that has been missing. We're seeing a lot of suicide within the wildland firefighter community, and we're dealing with tragedies every year. I mean, Granite Mountain was a big loss of life, but we continue to have loss of life every year. And so what Amanda and the Eric Marsh Foundation do now is they provide mental health support to wildland firefighters. And she provided me that support early on. And what I tell people when I talk about it was that no one would ever know that Amanda Marsh and the Eric Marsh Foundation provided me mental health support unless I said something, because she set it up. I agreed to go do it. And that was the last we talked about it until years later when I thanked her and started talking openly about it, because I believe it's an important conversation to have. It wasn't a conversation I heard when I was a young firefighter. So I'm hopeful that by speaking about it and by normalizing it and by being an example of somebody that struggled and then succeeded, I struggled and then excelled. there's hope. There's definitely a way to navigate mental health issues. I'm now on the board of directors, trying to help raise money and support Amanda and the foundation. But they're doing great work. They've got a website. You can check them out, the Eric Marsh Foundation. Just Google them, and you can read all about the good stuff that they're doing. But absolutely am 100% behind them and their mission.
Yeah. You mentioned raising money, and from what I see here, you've raised around $95,000, which is truly exceptional. And the Eric Marsh Foundation is obviously a wonderful thing which tries to help young people who are dealing with this stuff, and firefighters. How can people help the Eric Foundation? Where can they donate?
So on the website, I know that they have T-shirts and hats and things that people can purchase to support them. And I believe there's a way to make a donation there. They do fundraisers here in the States to raise money. But yeah, certainly, if anybody's interested in helping them out, get on the website, and there's information on there on, if you wanted to buy one of the Eric Marsh shirts, or they've got coins and hats and all sorts of stuff. So definitely I'd have your listeners go check them out.
Yeah, definitely. We've been discussing PTSD and how your job's affected you. How has your job had a positive impact on who you are today?
Wow, great question. So, having been challenged, having that challenging experience that impacted me, that I had to work through, leading at the level I did with the team that I got to work with, the teams, and in all those people that I interacted with, it changed me. I believe I'm stronger. I'm like, I leveled up at some point, to where I don't think without that type of an experience, I would have ever done all the self-reflecting that I had done, or gained the confidence that I gained from being able to go and tackle these very complex incidents with a team. So on the back end, I think I'm aware, where maybe I might not have been aware of how things had been impacting me or affecting me. When there's all these little things that happen over time, they're still part of your experience. It's still experience and baggage that you're carrying around. So, if you keep having little things happening, you may be taking stuff along with you that's influencing the way you're behaving, influencing the way you have your relationships, or you're treating your friends and family. So for me, I had, this sobering event that was like, wow, I'm impacted now, and I need to do some work, and I need to take a look at myself. I think my career caused me to do that, and I don't know if I would have done that if I hadn't been challenged the way I was.
Yeah.
So I think a lesson for me is, without that challenge, it's important to do a self-assessment occasionally. I think it's important to look at yourself, look at the way you're interacting with folks, see if there's any issues there. And if there's issues, try to figure out what might be causing them, and how you can move past them.
So at the end of every interview, we ask one question, which is, if you had to go back and say one thing to your 16-year-old self, what would it be? But I'm going to split this question into two. I'm going to say, if you could go back and say one thing to your 16-year-old self, what would it be? And if you had to say, give one piece of advice to yourself during a hard time, or during when the PTSD was really, really hitting hard, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Wow. So when PTSD was really hard, I think now that I've gotten to where I'm at, I would tell myself to have patience and and know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
As far as my 16-year-old self, I'd probably say, strap on your seatbelt. It's going to be a hell of a ride.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you talking to me. You're true inspiration to me, and hopefully a lot of teenagers can watch this and get the message regarding how to overcome PTSD. Thank you.
Hey, you bet. Thank you, Ben.